Right now, we're right in the middle of the dry season, and all the waterways have shrunk right up. What that means is that all the animals and the bird life concentrate right on those waterways, and that's what's happening here at the moment. Of course, in traditional times, Aboriginal people would have to wander around from one waterway to another. Consequently, they were fairly nomadic, chasing game and chasing the animals and the food. These days, of course, they don't do that anymore. What they do today is they live in communities like Aurukun. Despite an obvious change in lifestyle, the people of Aurukun, here in far north Queensland, have managed to hold on to many of their tribal traditions. And hidden away in this community, there's still just so much knowledge. You make that spear here last time? Huh? You make that spear here last time, yeah. Too. Fellas, just dump your gear over there. Put it down over there for a bit, eh? These blokes are from the city. And of course, to them, survival's helicopters and takeaway tucker. But you get them out the bush for a bit and take all those resources away, and it's a different ball game. They're going to be out here for the next 4 days, and they're going to be taught by the experts. Righto. Listen, I'll just go through a few points, particularly for you blokes who've just arrived here. You're going to be here for the next 4 days, working with these people here. And hopefully what they're going to do is pass across a whole bunch of information and knowledge that you've got no idea about to date. Okay? So keep your eyes open. You're looking for information. And if you ask questions, these people here will tell you. They'll give you all the information you want about living in this sort of country.
We gotta go together.
Yeah, right.
We're not separating each other.
No.
Yeah. Take these boys with us.
Yeah. Like that other time.
Yeah,
Same way.
other time.
Same way. Okay, now, you won't find it too hard. You're not going to starve while you're here. There's plenty of tucker around. These billabongs. The Army needs to know how to survive in Northern Australia, and that's what my job's all about. And I reckon this is the best way to do it. These men are in the Army Reserve. They've spent time in the bush before, but not like this. Not where they have to find their own food. On this survival exercise, they'll have to learn fast about finding good water and living off the land. They'll learn to see things they've never seen before, and going bush will never be quite the same again.
Make some bowl for drink. If you see like this, that's the water in there. Yes.
The tree's bulbs and bulbs.
Yeah.
Bulbs.
Yeah.
Was only this type of tree?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
this.
like this.
Oh,
Yeah. Taste it, eh, boys? Yeah.
nice.
Boys? Boys, you have to drink it? Get used to it, eh?
Tasmania. Alright. That's okay. Good. Yeah, you got it all right.
Yeah. You got one?
Yeah, I got
Good.
Working closely with Aboriginals is a new experience for most of these men. They'll have to adapt, and it'll probably take a couple of days for the ice to break. But once things get underway, I'll be leaving them here to learn and fend for themselves.
That? Through there? Yeah, through there. And hang on to the spear. Yeah. So it's multi-purpose. Yeah, I think so.
These blokes have got it pretty easy. They're getting handed about 40,000 years of experience. But the first Europeans to come aboard this part of the world, and we're on the western side of Cape York Peninsula, didn't appreciate what the Aboriginals had to offer. In fact, they encountered some very hostile situations. Not like this. 120 kilometres north of Aurukun, there's a place called the Pennyfather River. It might seem just like any other river, but this is the point of first European contact with Australia. And it happened long before Captain Cook. As early as 1606, a Dutch explorer called William Jantz just happened to bump into the Australian coastline right here. Just have a look at this. This is 400 years of untouched Australian history, because it was 160 years before Cook got here that Jantz was down this coastline, and absolutely nothing has changed. If you go back to where Cook visited Australia, Botany Bay and Cooktown, it's all different. But here, it's exactly the same. Oh, the sand dunes might move a bit from year to year, but that's about it. We've certainly got no takeaway tucker joints here. But it seems that tucker was the last thing on Jantz's mind. What looks like a tranquil place today turned into a real nightmare for the Dutchmen. They clashed with the local Aboriginals, the Wik-Monken tribe. Several men were killed and Jantz fled. His journal has never been found, but we can be pretty sure that, like all the other European explorers who followed him, he wasn't too impressed with what he saw of Australia. It's pretty understandable, really. Those Dutch sailors came out here looking for wealth, spices and gold, things they are familiar with. This must have looked like landing on the moon. It's fascinating to imagine what could have happened if they'd stayed longer. Could they have survived? Those people who attacked Jantz have been living off the land for thousands of years. Today you can still do it, if you know what you're looking for. You see these? They're cockle shells, and you get them very commonly along this coastline. All you got to do is chuck them on the hot coals and they pop open and you can eat them. They're just like a mussel. In fact, Aboriginals did eat the odd one or two of these. This has got to be the residue of the biggest feed in history, because what we've got here are just thousands and thousands of these cockle shells, and they've been collected here over about a 1,000-year period and just chucked up here, because what we've got here is basically the garbage dump. All the way back over there, the mounds continue, and right around this Weipa area in Cape York, there are something like 500 of these cockleshell mounds. Absolutely staggering. And if this is any indication, there should be plenty of tucker to be found around here. I'll be able to use these later on. Tell you something about these. These are a thing called Nonda plum, and they're only found on this west coast of Cape York, nowhere else. They formed one of the basic staple food items for Aboriginal people. And they'd fall from these trees, like this one behind me, litter the ground for about 2 or 3 months of the year, and then Aboriginal people collect them up, mash them up, or eat them raw. They've got a very mealy sort of a taste to them. Pretty dry too. I was reading in one book one time, an anthropologist bloke by the name of Thompson, I think, reckoned that these were particularly popular with old toothless Aboriginal women. I can understand why. They're one of the best examples we've got of where Aboriginal people actually preserve food. What they do is dig a hole, collect up the nuts, and then bury them into the hole. They'd cover them up, And that way, they'd stay fresh and they'd come back perhaps 2, 3, 4 weeks later and dig out the hole again. Of course, when you're dealing with bush tucker, things aren't quite that simple all the time. Right here amongst the Nonda plums, we've got these little fellas here. They're a little berry called gidgee. Now, if you were to crush one of those up and eat it, there's no doubt about it, you'd die, because they contain a toxin called abrin. Yet, Aboriginal people found a use for even this. The women would pick them out, crush it up and swallow it to bring on an abortion. The trick is, how do you pick the right one? The idea is to drop the abra seeds into water. Most of them will sink, but occasionally one will pop back up onto the surface, floating. And it was those floating ones that they'd chew up and swallow. Now, half the time, they'd not only abort the fetus, they'd also abort themselves. It was an extremely dangerous practice, a bit like Russian roulette. I guess the whole exercise goes to emphasise the fine line between surviving and dying in the bush. Mangroves are not the most comfortable place that you choose to be in. But along this coast, you often have to get through them to get from the sea to the inland. There are mosquitoes, sandflies, and also crocodiles, so I always come prepared. This is not the first place that you'd think of to look for food. But once you get in here and once you start looking, there's just so much to see. It's an untouched, primitive environment, just teeming with life. Like this little fella here, a Queensland mud crab. One of these will certainly give you a good feed. Some of the food's very skillfully camouflaged. This mud mussel is a real mangrove delicacy. It's high in protein and it tastes great. Well worth the effort of a trip into the mangroves. Not only do the animals and the insects give you a hard time in the mangroves, but sometimes the plants do as well. And this is one of those nasty little fellas that you've got to be quite careful of. See that little white sap on there? That's called milky mangrove or blind your eye mangrove. And if you get that in your eye, you'll go blind. However, Aboriginal people, get that out of the way for a minute, found a redeeming feature about this fella. They found that if they put that sap into a stingray sting, it would cure the sting. Of course, to get a stingray, you've got to first get yourself a boat. The traditional way to catch stingray around here is from a canoe. The people here became very skillful at building dugout canoes made from local trees. But of all the trees around here, there was only one type that they used, a very special tree called a bombax. And they're quite rare, not easy to find. This is a real beauty. In fact, Aboriginal people used to prize these trees so much that they used to, here it is here, put a big blaze across the trunk. And that would mean personal ownership of the tree, so that they could later on chop it down and turn it into a canoe. See him, Freddie?
Come a bit more close.
Yeah. Get him. Get him. Yep. Yep. Hey, get him? Oh, look at that blue ring, eh? Oh, beauty. Whoop. Yeah. That's that spine. Oh, the blue rings all over him. Oh, yeah. What's that needle? You got two needles, this fella. Yeah.
One missing and second one get.
Yeah, 1, 2. You cook him up? Looks a beauty, doesn't he? All right, we might take this in and go and have a go at him, eh? Paddle him off that. Yeah, paddle him back to the beach. I told you these things would come in handy. They're a little seed pod off the grevillea. And up here, we call them the bushman's clothes peg. They're quite a neat little item. I suppose you reckon I got a big feed of stingray stew here. Well, there's a bit of a local practice in vogue here. And it says that the bloke who spears the stingray takes it home and eats it. That's fair enough. Us blokes who bail out the boat, we got to look after ourselves. I wonder if those army blokes back at the exercise are doing any better. They've been out there for 4 days now.
It's just plastic. I'll remember that.
Should get more wood. Turtle. Yeah. Yeah, but any part you should not eat.
No, this is good to
Eat the whole lot.
Yeah,
What you eat? All of it?
all of this good to
You
eat.
eat anything.
Oh, wait, I'm just kidding.
Eh? Too much.
Kentucky Fried Turtle.
Rabbit.
Rabbit
Cut
and
up little bits, everybody.
a little bit down.
Yeah.
Not grab the whole lot. And it hardly.
I've been can't get up. Yeah, that's
I've been a fat part of yours.
oh, yeah, good.
Good.
Chicken.
Chicken.
No, a bit of venison, but chicken.
It'll wear Tony, yeah.
No, I won't taste
Mine,
that.
yeah.
That's good.
Tastes better. That's all right. I use this to get the soup.
You gotta cut it after. File snake.
Pass him round.
Bones, lots of bones.
Yeah, eat the bones, eh?
You eat them, then? Eat the bones?
Don't chew bones.
I chew them.
You can chew them up.
No, what? Not a yeah, can in and one
You want a fair few of them to make a feed, wouldn't you?
Or is that bit of
You
almond?
want a lot of them, eh?
That's almond. Almond, so I don't need that, eh?
Good lunch, eh?
I want them.
Sergeant and one
Good. Good and chewy.
I young is you.
It's like a fishy sort of chook taste, isn't it?
Chucky.
Now tell us, fair dinkum, what are your attitude about Aboriginals now that you've been mixing with this type of situation for a couple of days, compared with what you had before you got here?
Yeah, different.
Different.
Well, just that, there's so much more. So they've got the culture up here, they don't seem to be... They've got, they can teach us things, which is amazing. Normally you don't think of that.
Yeah.
And they've got such a rich culture too, and it goes back so far. And they hang on to that, but they also, these guys play guitar in a rock band as well.
Yeah.
But he takes both, so that's really good.
Yeah.
Much different attitude than you get just looking in the cities.
Yeah. What about the area here? Do you feel a bit more confident in this sort of environment
Oh,
now?
much, yeah. Yeah, especially the water tree.
Yeah.
Or getting the water out of the tree, I feel a hell of a lot more confident than what I would if I stuck out here for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Yeah, much more, yeah.
We had a bit of a throw around spears yesterday afternoon, and young fellas were having a go. Then old James got up, one hand, give it a bit of a shake, and straight as a die.
It's pretty good, they're really right on it. So obviously they've been learning off their parents and their grandparents too.
Which is really good.
Skills and their history. Like they were telling us about all the storybooks they got, and they've got a dictionary written in their own language and everything. They're really proud of that, which amazed me.
Yeah.
That actually, embrace the culture, not only just look at it as something we've got to learn, like we would.
Yeah.
I hope to see you down at Arakoon sometime. You come down.
Yeah.
See you back sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything, eh?
Thank you very much.
Peter will be in Cairns.
Yeah.
Do your recruit course with us. All right. Take you around. Peter.
Yeah.
Come in. Thanks for helping us all those things.
You to the fisherman?
Yeah, man.
From Tiffany.
Fantastic.
Do you think you're enjoying
We'll come to Arakoon sometime.
Yeah.
I'll probably
Thanks around.
A lot of Aboriginal people have lost their culture and their traditional background, but that's not the case with these Arakoon people. These Arakoon people, interestingly enough, are the same people, the Wick Monken group, that gave old Jant such a hard time up there on the Pennyfather River. Fortunately for us, times have changed.